You want me to start at the beginning? What do you want? Of course, we tried to have children and weren't successful to have our own. And so the adoption, we were very blessed to be able to adopt Trenton. We were the threesome. We did a lot of stuff together all the time. And he had ADHD and he was dyslexic. So I stopped working at the church so that I could be his advocate for his schooling, his education. He was in the seventh grade, and Fred had been ill this whole time. And so what ended up was Fred was going to have a heart transplant. But Trenton was very sensitive to Fred's needs all along. He was a very compassionate, sensitive child. Trenton's shoulder started hurting, but the pain was so intense that, Trenton couldn't raise his arm. He'd found something in his neck and thought, well, we don't know, we're going to keep him because it could be cancer. So anyway, so throughout that whole time, of course, I'm feeling guilty because I'm thinking I didn't take him to the doctor soon enough. I didn't know, if I would have just gone sooner, if we'd have tried this, he wouldn't have been in this much pain and this would have happened, gone on a lot better. So Trenton was doing really good. He even got to go back to school. We weren't even sure he'd get to go back to school because of staph infection, and he had a PICC line in after he got out of the hospital. He really missed his soccer team and wanted to play soccer, but he didn't get to continue that season. But we did go watch him play in a tournament one weekend in Granbury. And as we were driving over there, Trenton just got to feeling really bad, and then they put him in ICU on Thursday. And so he was going to stay there, and I stayed with him in ICU. And Fred couldn't stay because of his immunosuppressant. What happened was his brain had swollen so much that it had pushed the stem down into the spinal cord there. The thing is they didn't think it was bad enough to do surgery because that's really the only way that you can repair that narrowness is to do surgery. So then they kept him on life support for us. I had to call Fred that morning and tell him to come, that Trenton had passed away and that he was on life support. So and I had to call my parents and my nephews and Z, and she passed it on and to you. And anyway, so we stayed there in the hospital. That put us in a room. It's like a big ICU room. We were able to be in there with Trenton, and he was just in the bed, and we were just, Fred and I were laying there just loving on him and stuff. Even though we knew that he had passed, but we didn't want to let him.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you can imagine how that felt. Knowing your child's laying there and dying dead. But so then, I had to go home and without him. And it was awful. So
losing a child, I'll just say this, to me, it is the hardest grief to overcome, especially a young child.
Yeah.
And because in our minds, we're the caregivers, we're the protectors. And there's so much that gets invited in that when a child dies.
Yeah, right. After the funeral was over and, we had a private burial, and then I think for me, it was just that every day after that was horrible because I felt like I'd let God down because Trenton was a gift that we'd received, and I didn't take care of him like I was supposed to. I didn't get him raised into the godly man that he was supposed to be. And honestly, I went to Starbucks that day every day. I went straight to the graveside, and I just laid there, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I just asked God to just take me, please, just take me. Either bring him back to me or take me, because I don't want to do this. I don't want to live like this. This is too deep. This pain is too hard for me. I just laid there and I just go day after day after day. and nothing ever changed. I didn't feel better. I didn't, he wasn't coming back. He didn't miraculously appear, and I didn't die. So I was like, and then finally, one day while I was at the cemetery, I just said, well, obviously you have a reason for me to still be here. I don't know what it is. I don't want to be here, but obviously God has a reason for me to still be here. And I just have to live each day knowing that there is something else that I'm supposed to do. And I don't know what it is. I don't know where I'm going. That's just finally the thing that broke through to me. But it was after so much pain and guilt because I felt I'd let God down. I felt I'd let Trenton down. I felt I'd let Fred down, and I'd let myself down. I was no longer a mom. He was my only child. I wasn't a mom anymore. After going to therapy, what I realized though is that I am a mom. I'm always a mom. I'm always Trenton's mom. Trenton is always a part of my life, and I am a mom.
Yeah.
And when people ask me if I have children, I have children. I have a son. He just lives in heaven. He doesn't live with me.
Because you talked about your routine that you did, Starbucks, cemetery, and laying down, living in this horrendous part, and that's what's referred to as that first phase that we go through. What was helpful for you during that time, or what resources do you wish you had that weren't at your disposal, or looking back and say, I wish I would have done this a little differently?
I had friends that knew Trenton, and I could just go sit in their living room and cry. I could come to your office and cry. I could go see Pam and cry. I could call my best friend from New Mexico and just cry. And they listened and the Smellies. I mean, it was just that whole family that surrounded us. I would have never, and Fred and I never would have made it through that if we had not had a church family that surrounded us. Even that first Sunday after Trenton died, we had his funeral on a Friday. And after that, I knew I needed to go to church because that's where my support was. And I need to be in presence of God in a worship service just because I knew that's the only place that it was going to heal or help me get out of this pain, this horrible intenseness that I was in. So, and Starbucks was like my comfort. That was like a comfort, it was a comfort drink. I don't know because it's dumb, but it worked. So I went to Starbucks instead of drinking beer or, or wine or whatever. It was having people that knew Trenton and cared about him and could really tell me the stories still about him that helped me. Because that was the main thing is I was afraid, one, I was going to forget him. Two, I was going to forget what it sounded like when he said, Mom, I love you. His voice. I didn't want to lose his voice. And his hugs. Just his presence was what I really I missed so much.
And then just like you were saying, just one day I looked up and I noticed there was a lot of headstones out there that I never noticed before. And I thought, golly, there's people who've been where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And where are they now? They're not sitting there dwelling. And so that's when I knew I had to do something. And and you had that same moment, right?
Yeah. I had friends that had lost their daughter a few years before that in a terrible car accident. And so I knew I wasn't the only person that was, and then I had another friend that lost their daughter in a suicide. And so I knew it was a club I didn't want to be in, but I knew that there were others, parents who lost their children, whose children died. There were some websites. There was a Compassionate Friends that I went on a little bit. I did have a therapist that I went and saw, and I had a journal, and I wrote letters to Trenton and told him what was going on every day, how much I missed him, what we did that day. And I just continued to write letters and write letters and write letters, just pouring my pain out in that, as well as when I would go to the cemetery. And what I wished I'd had were books that didn't say you're going to feel this way for 3 months, and then you're going to go to this next step, and then you're going to go to this next step, and then you're going to go to this next step. Because I thought, I'm never going to get through all those 5 stages of grief, or however many there are, because I feel this one day and I feel this the next day. And it's like, but I thought if I finished this one, I would go through this. So those books, people kept sending those to me and giving them to me. And I just couldn't go there with them. I just was like, it's not working for me. Once I started reading some of them, I was just like, this isn't going to work. So
That's exactly right. And because it's, in all actuality, that really wasn't intended for grief, those 5 stages, but it just kind of got lumped into it. So those stories are so important because your brain says, yes, I remember these things right now, all the times we spent together. But now I realize Trenton's not coming back. So I have to create something completely different. And part of your remapping of your brain was to say, he's still your child.
yeah,
You're still his mother. He's in a different place, but he's with you. That's a
yeah,
remapping. And so you get to keep both maps. So you'll always remember what his voice sounds like. And you always have these feelings of you never forget him, because the third thing your brain does, it centers on closeness. And that closeness never changes. Space, time changes, closeness never.
yeah,
So the first stage is just so intense. You can't do anything except do your routine of coffee and cemetery.
yeah.
And then at some point you said, okay, now I have to do something. Is that when you started doing counseling? Or
All of the friends that were Trenton's friends, and his soccer team and his dancing competition team, all of those people still meant so much to us because they were family. One of the things that I was able to do was I just decided I needed to be with those people. And so when they started playing soccer again, I went to the soccer games. It was painful, but it was intentional because I needed to feel those kids and those families and know that Trenton was a part of something and that he was still in that space there and I could go and do that. And so, intentionally I would go to the soccer games and see the kids and stuff. And I needed to figure out how I was going to move forward. And that was my life before he passed away. And I needed to somehow continue through that until I knew I was okay to move on from that. Went back to the dance studio and took a hip hop class because he took hip hop, but I took a hip hop class with some women, but I saw people who had Trenton, whose kids danced with Trenton and stuff. So that's the kind of thing that I had to do to experience some things that I'd done or that he had done that I'd done and just move through that. I cried a lot, but it was still helpful to me because I still had a connection with those people because of Trenton. So I feel like I'm really blessed to have had those relationships because of Trenton. So that's part of, I think, what helps me move forward. Even though he's not here, there's still space there for whatever. I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, it does. I remember very clearly on one day, it was October 5th, that I all of a sudden got my energy back. Did you have one of those moments at all?
I did come to a point where I said, I've got to do something with my life that's different. I'm not a mom. I'm not taking care of his educational needs now. What is it that I can do that can honor what I know from what I've learned from Trenton? So I got very involved with the Dyslexia Association, and I helped some people there in Weatherford, advocate for their kids because of dyslexia. And then I decided that's what I want to do is I want to become an academic language therapist. I want to become a teacher and teach kids with dyslexia because I know the struggles they go through. And that's an area where I can help other kids. And so I started that process. And there were some times that it was it was very painful as I remembered Trenton's struggles. It was very painful remembering some of those things, but I was moving forward through that.
That's phenomenal, because I think sometimes we put ourselves in a situation where we box ourselves in to doing one thing. So like, I always got to do this constant yearning, to do something more deeper on a deeper level. As we grow, our objectives grow, and our ministry grows, and we change. And so we're constantly getting deeper and deeper and deeper into life and being more useful to that. And so you're doing something. What are you doing right now?
I work for CASA of Denton County. So I recruit and train the volunteers that work with children who have been abused and neglected and are in the foster care system. So I get to train them, and then I get to see them in action, the impact that they make on the lives of children who are in really hard places. And I mean, it's just something that I feel very proud of. I feel like this is where this all led me to, because I'm still working with people who work with kids, and I'm getting ready to do some trauma-based relational intervention classes and get certified in that, because I feel like that's another area that I can really move forward and honor Trenton and honor Fred too, by continuing to work with kids and families and minister in that way. And just, so I love what I'm doing. I think I'm in the exact place that God wanted me to be. Everything that happened in my past has brought me to this place now where I am.
Yeah.
Will that change in a few years? It probably will. It'll move me forward to something else. I don't know. But I know this is where I'm supposed to be right now. And I feel really honored to get to be there, but I get to do something that honors both of them and God, So
Well, that's amazing. Well, how do you tell people who don't know that there's about, and he didn't really know how to phrase this. It was kind of like that the joy he found because of what happened to Charlie. And it's like it almost sounds kind of morbid in a sense.
yeah,
And he was worried about that what?
yeah,
And it's like, folks, these things happen every single day. Like you said, it's not a club you want to be a part of, but only 100% of us are a part of it.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like, and so what do you do with it? We're going to go through this process. We're going to experience what we experience. No one's exempt. And I've always thought the craziest thing about grief is knowing this. Everyone goes through it, but once you're in it, you think you're the only one.
Yeah, you do. You do. You think you're the only one.
And it's like, because we don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
We just don't talk about it. So what would you say to all those parents who go through similar situations that you went through, either losing a child or suddenly, or whatever it might be? What would be the word of hope that you would say to them?
That it's okay to talk about your child, and it's okay for people to talk about your child. And I welcomed that. I wanted people to talk about Trenton because I wanted to know that he made a difference. And I love it when people tell stories about him and things they remember. And then I talk about him all the time. It's just that I feel Trenton with me every day still. I feel his presence in the things that I do. I can talk to him anytime I want. And he doesn't roll his eyes like a teenager and all of that kind of stuff. He just listens, right? And and I see him in my dreams too sometimes. You can't just say they're not, just because you don't physically get to touch them, they're not a part of you anymore. Because they'll always be a part of you.
Well said. Well, that closeness is always there, so you can't shut it. You can put pillows over it, but
That's true.
it's still going to be there. Well, I love you, Miss Beth, and I appreciate you very, very much for doing this with me and being a part of that journey.
I'm really excited about what you're doing, because I think it's it's really good. It's good to hear those things that other people have as intense a pain as you do, and then you can really. I think the brain part of it is very interesting too. So that's just really. I can't wait to read the rest of the stuff that you write. Good work, Danny.
Well, bless you, my child, and your journey. And I was proud to be a part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very blessed and thankful for you in my life. So,
Yes.
all
Same
right.
here, my friend.